What would you do if a furious neighbor crashed your serene lake day, accusing you of trespassing on the very property you poured your heart into? Picture this. I was mid-dive into the shimmering waters of my private lake, the sun blazing overhead, its warmth kissing my skin, when a shrill voice sliced through the air like a siren. You're trespassing on association property, and I'm calling the authorities right now. That's when Margaret, the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, stormed through my gate, her phone clutched like a weapon of justice, her oversized sunglasses glinting with fury. Her voice dripped with an authority she didn't have, and her floral dress flapped like a flag of war in the summer breeze. The kicker? My property isn't even part of her lakeside association. I'd spent the morning tending to my garden, the earthy scent of soil grounding me, fixing the creaky dock with sweat on my brow, and dreaming of a quiet afternoon floating on the lake, until Margaret's flip-flops slapped against my deck, shattering my peace like glass. Now, imagine yourself in my shoes. A stranger is on your land, recording you like you're a criminal, her accusations echoing in your ears. What would you do next? Would you confront her head-on and demand she leave, or stay calm and gather evidence to prove your innocence? Drop your choice in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And please, hit that subscribe button for daily narrated stories. We're racing to 1,000 subscribers, and your support means the world to us as we bring you stories that inspire, challenge, and uplift. It was a scorching Saturday in July, the kind where the heat wraps around you like a suffocating blanket, the air thick with the scent of sunscreen and freshly cut grass. I'd been looking forward to this day for weeks, a rare break from my demanding job as a freelance graphic designer, a chance to soak in the tranquility of my lakeside retreat in Willow Creek. I'd bought this property 5 years ago, a quaint 2-story cabin nestled on the edge of the lake, precisely because it wasn't part of the nearby Lakeside Association. My grandfather had once owned a cabin just a mile down the road, a place where I'd spent countless summers fishing, swimming, and listening to his stories about the importance of independence. Never let anyone tell you how to live on your own land, he'd say, his voice gruff but warm, his eyes crinkling with a smile as we cast our lines into the water, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink. When I found this property, it felt like a promise kept, a sanctuary where I could escape the rules and regulations that suffocated so many neighborhoods, a place to honor his memory. The lake, with its glassy surface reflecting the sky, was my haven, a symbol of freedom I'd fought hard to secure after years of saving every penny, working late nights to make this dream a reality. But that dream came crashing down the moment Margaret burst in, her voice a piercing accusation that shattered the stillness, her presence an unwelcome storm on my peaceful horizon. "Margaret, this is my property," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through me, my hands gripping the towel a little too tightly, the rough fabric a grounding contrast to the chaos unfolding. She didn't even blink, her oversized sunglasses glinting with a fury that seemed to radiate from her entire being. "This lake falls under association jurisdiction," she snapped, her tone sharp enough to cut glass, each word laced with an authority she didn't possess. "We voted on it. This is communal space." I stared at her, my mind racing, replaying every detail of my property purchase, the realtor's assurances, the county records, the boundary lines I'd memorized to ensure my independence. "Margaret, my land isn't part of your association. It never has been. I'm outside the boundary line. You're the one trespassing right now." My words hung in the air, heavy with truth, but her face twisted with indignation, her lips pursing as if I'd insulted her very existence. Without another word, she marched back through the gate. My gate, clearly marked with a private property, no trespassing sign, the irony of her actions almost laughable, and dialed 911, her fingers stabbing at the screen with a ferocity that matched the fire in her eyes. I stood there, dripping wet, the sun beating down on my shoulders, the heat amplifying the tension in my chest, my grandfather's words echoing in my mind. "Stand your ground, kid. Always stand your ground." 10 minutes later, 2 deputies arrived, their patrol car kicking up clouds of dust on my gravel driveway, the crunch of tires a stark contrast to the gentle lapping of the lake against the dock. One of them, a lanky officer with a wad of gum in his cheek, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, his eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for an escape from the absurdity of the situation. The other, a shorter man with a sunburned nose and a weary expression, seemed equally unimpressed, his uniform slightly wrinkled from the heat, his posture slouched with the weight of too many frivolous calls. Margaret rushed toward them, her voice shrill with urgency, her flip-flops slapping against the ground like a metronome of chaos. "Officers, this man is trespassing on association property. He's refusing to leave the lake and violating our standards." Her words tumbled out in a frenzy, her hands gesturing wildly toward me, as if I were a criminal caught in the act, her floral dress a vivid splash of color against the muted tones of my deck. The deputies exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of skepticism and exhaustion, then turned their gaze to me, their eyes narrowing slightly as they assessed the situation. I gave a small wave, trying to keep my composure despite the absurdity unfolding before me, my stomach churning with a mix of frustration and defiance. "I live here," I said simply, my voice calm but firm, the words a quiet assertion of my rights. "Want to see my deed?" I retrieved a folder from the outdoor cabinet near my patio, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer ridiculousness of having to prove my own home to a stranger. They took the documents, stepped aside to a shaded spot under my oak tree, and made a few calls, their voices low but audible over the hum of cicadas, the summer air thick with tension. Margaret stood there, arms crossed, glaring at me like I'd stolen her entire world, her presence a dark cloud over my once peaceful afternoon. After what felt like an eternity, the lanky deputy returned, scratching his head, his gum chewing slowing as he spoke, his tone slow and deliberate, each word a hammer against Margaret's delusions. "Ma'am," he said, "we've confirmed with county records. This property isn't part of your association. It's never been. It's privately owned, no dues, no regulations, since the development began." Margaret's jaw dropped, her face a mask of disbelief, her sunglasses slipping down her nose as she struggled to process the words, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "That can't be right," she protested, her voice rising to a near shriek, the desperation in her tone palpable. "We had a map," the board said. The deputy cut her off, his patience visibly thinning, his sunburned partner nodding in agreement. "The board doesn't set county records, ma'am. You filed a false report. That's a serious offense." The weight of his words hit me like a wave of relief, washing over me like the cool lake water I'd been swimming in moments before, but beneath it, a flicker of unease stirred. Margaret wasn't the type to accept defeat, not with her history of meddling, not with the fire in her eyes that burned brighter than the midday sun. I couldn't hold back a chuckle, the sound slipping out before I could stop it, a release of the tension that had been building in my chest since her arrival. Margaret whirled on me, her eyes blazing with fury, her hands trembling with barely contained rage. "This isn't over," she hissed, her voice low and venomous, each word a promise of retribution that sent a shiver down my spine despite the heat. "You'll regret humiliating me." She stormed off, her flip-flops slapping against the ground, the irony of her trespassing on my clearly marked property burning brighter than the sun overhead, the sign swaying slightly in the breeze as if mocking her retreat, a silent witness to her defeat. I watched the deputies climb back into their car, the sunburned one giving me a nod, his expression softening slightly, a hint of sympathy in his tired eyes. "You'd be surprised how often this happens," he muttered, his voice tinged with a weary resignation that spoke of too many similar encounters. I wasn't surprised, not really. Margaret had a reputation in the neighborhood, a self-proclaimed enforcer who once fined a family for having a spiritually unsettling garden gnome, claiming it disrupted the neighborhood's energy. She'd measured lawns with a ruler, reported mailboxes for being too colorful, and even tried to ban a child's lemonade stand for unpermitted commerce, her clipboard a constant companion in her crusade for control. But this was a new low, even for her, a direct assault on my sanctuary, a place I'd poured my heart into, a place where I'd planned to build memories with my future family, just as I had with my grandfather. That night, as the stars glittered above my lake, I sat on my patio with a cold lemonade, the water lapping gently against the dock, the sound a soothing contrast to the chaos of the day. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, a scent that always reminded me of my grandfather's cabin, of simpler times when the only battles I fought were against stubborn fish on the end of my line. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd back off now that the truth was out, that the deputy's words would be enough to deter her, to restore the peace I'd fought so hard to create. But the next morning, as I sipped my coffee and checked my mailbox, a note appeared, scrawled in purple marker on the back of a community newsletter. "You're a disgrace to this neighborhood. Join the association, or things will get messy." No signature, but the tone was unmistakably Margaret's, the handwriting jagged with barely contained rage, each stroke of the pen a testament to her unyielding obsession. My stomach churned, not with fear, but with a growing resolve, a fire igniting in my chest that burned hotter than the summer sun. This wasn't about lake access or rules. It was about control, about Margaret's desperate need to bend everyone to her will, to erase any reminder that her power was an illusion. She couldn't stand that I lived outside her grasp, free from her imaginary authority, a living testament to the independence she couldn't control. And people like that don't back down. They double down, their obsession driving them to new heights of irrationality, their actions a storm that threatens to uproot everything in its path. I thought of my grandfather again, his weathered hands casting a fishing line into the lake, his voice steady as he taught me to stand firm, his lessons a lifeline in the chaos. "They'll push you," he'd said, his eyes fixed on the horizon, "but you push back harder, with the truth." So I took action, my resolve hardening with each passing moment. I upgraded my security system, installing 3 new cameras and a video doorbell, my heart heavy with the realization that my sanctuary was now a battleground, a place where I'd have to fight to protect the peace I'd built. The process took hours, drilling into the wooden beams of my cabin, adjusting the angles to cover every inch of my property. The whir of the drill a constant reminder of the war I hadn't asked for, each screw a small act of defiance against Margaret's intrusion. I knew I'd need evidence if Margaret came back, and deep down, I had a sinking feeling she would, her threat echoing in my mind like a storm on the horizon, dark clouds gathering in the distance, promising chaos. The next morning began with a deceptive calm, the kind that lulls you into a false sense of security, a quiet before the storm that I should have recognized. The birds sang their morning chorus, their melodies a stark contrast to the tension brewing inside me, and the sun cast golden rays across the lake, the water shimmering like a promise of peace I longed to reclaim. I sipped my coffee on the porch, the steam rising in lazy curls, the bitter taste grounding me as I tried to shake off the unease that had settled in my bones. I decided to review the overnight footage from my new cameras, more out of habit than expectation, just a routine check to ease my mind, to convince myself that the worst was over. But halfway through the video, I nearly dropped my mug, the hot liquid sloshing dangerously close to the edge, my heart leaping into my throat. There, in grainy night vision, was Margaret, skulking down the sidewalk in a bathrobe, a flashlight in one hand and a stack of papers in the other, her movements jerky with paranoia. She moved like a thief in the night, her head darting left and right, her silhouette a dark omen against the moonlit street. She stopped at my mailbox, glanced around one last time, her eyes glinting with a manic determination, and stuffed a folded paper inside before darting away, her robe flapping behind her like a cape, her figure disappearing into the shadows as quickly as she'd appeared. I fast-forwarded the footage, my pulse quickening, a mix of anger and disbelief coursing through me, the violation of my space a bitter pill to swallow. She'd been on my property, again, under the cover of darkness, her audacity a slap in the face to the deputy's warning, a direct challenge to the boundaries I'd fought to protect. I retrieved the paper, my fingers trembling with a mix of anger and amusement, the early morning air cool against my skin, the scent of dew on the grass a faint comfort in the face of her intrusion. It was sealed with a bright orange sticker that read, "Urgent. Action required." The adhesive peeling at the edges as if applied in haste, the sticker a garish mark on the otherwise serene morning. Inside was a poorly photocopied letter on fake association letterhead, the kind you'd find on a shady website, the text riddled with typos and smudged ink, a testament to her desperation. The fine was $300 for a made-up offense, excessive ripple disturbance. According to Margaret, my swimming was creating waves that violated community standards. The absurdity of the claim almost comical if it weren't so infuriating. I glanced at my empty lake, the water still as glass, reflecting the pink and orange hues of the sunrise. Its surface a mirror of the peace she was trying to shatter, and burst out laughing, the sound echoing across the quiet morning, a release of the tension that had been building inside me. Margaret had officially lost it, her delusions spiraling into a realm of pure fantasy, her actions a desperate grasp at control she'd never had. But beneath the humor, a cold realization settled in. She thought I'd just accept this, that I'd bow to her fabricated rules without a fight, that I'd let her rewrite the truth to fit her narrative. The thought made my blood boil, my grandfather's voice ringing in my ears, a steady anchor in the storm. Don't let them scare you, kid. You've got the truth on your side. That afternoon, I drove to the real Lakeside Association office, not Margaret's fantasy regime, but the actual board that governed the properties within their boundaries, a small, nondescript building on the edge of town with a faded sign barely visible through the overgrown shrubs. I walked in with a folder of Margaret's fake notices, my heart pounding with a mix of determination and unease, the weight of the folder heavy in my hands, each step a declaration of my resolve. What if they didn't believe me? What if they sided with her, dismissing me as an outsider causing trouble, an interloper in their tightly controlled world? I pushed the thoughts aside, my resolve hardening as I stepped inside, the air conditioning a stark contrast to the oppressive heat outside, the cool air a momentary relief against the storm brewing inside me. I asked to speak with someone about a neighbor impersonating their authority, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach, the words a quiet assertion of my rights. The manager, a tired-looking woman named Sandra with graying hair and a permanent frown, took one look at the papers and let out a groan, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had just settled on them, her eyes scanning the documents with a mix of resignation and frustration. "Not again," she muttered, her voice heavy with exhaustion, a testament to the toll Margaret's antics had taken on the community. She explained that Margaret had been stripped of any official role 2 years ago after a string of complaints. Residents had reported her for everything from unauthorized fines to verbal harassment, her actions a constant source of chaos in an otherwise quiet neighborhood. She'd been ignoring cease and desist orders ever since, harassing residents, some of whom, like me, weren't even in the association, her obsession with control driving her to target anyone who dared to live outside her rules. When I told Sandra my property was unaffiliated, her eyes widened in horror, her hands pausing mid-page, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "She's gone after others before," Sandra warned, her tone grave, her gaze meeting mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine despite the warmth of the room. "Be careful. She doesn't stop. Last year, she drove a young couple out of the neighborhood with her antics. They couldn't take the constant harassment, the endless notices, the late-night visits. I thought she'd learned her lesson, but clearly, I was wrong." Sandra's words lingered in my mind as I drove home, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the road, the lake shimmering in the distance like a beacon of peace I longed to reclaim, its surface a promise of the tranquility I'd fought so hard to protect. Margaret wasn't just a nuisance. She was a force of chaos, a woman so consumed by her need for control that she'd alienated an entire community, her actions a storm that left destruction in its wake. Over the next few days, Margaret's notices multiplied, each one more absurd than the last, a relentless assault on my peace. I found them tucked under my doormat, the neon paper a jarring contrast to the natural wood, taped to my car windshield, the adhesive leaving a sticky residue that refused to come off, even pinned to my fence with a clothespin, the bright colors fluttering in the breeze like a flag of war. One demanded I remove my wind spinners, claiming they were a visual nuisance that disrupted the neighborhood's aesthetic, the delicate chimes a source of joy for me, but a target for her wrath. Another accused me of harboring invasive species because of my fish-shaped lawn ornament, a gift from a friend that had always made me smile, its bright blue scales a reminder of happier times. Each notice chipped away at my patience, the constant intrusion a reminder that Margaret wasn't going to stop. Not until she got what she wanted, or until I made her stop. the weight of her campaign a heavy burden on my shoulders. I began to feel like a prisoner in my own home, constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack. The once joyful sound of the lake now a bitter reminder of the battle I was fighting. The lake, with its serene surface, felt like a battlefield, its beauty tainted by the shadow of Margaret's obsession, a constant reminder of the freedom I was fighting to protect. The real tipping point came 3 days later when an animal control officer knocked on my door, the sharp rap of his knuckles pulling me from my morning routine, the sound a jarring intrusion into the quiet of my cabin. He was a soft-spoken man with a clipboard clutched tightly in his hands, his uniform crisp despite the early hour, his eyes tired but kind. He asked if I owned a wolf, a peacock, or a miniature pony, his tone polite but tinged with confusion, the absurdity of the question catching me off guard, my mind racing to make sense of the situation. I blinked at him, the words sinking in, a mix of disbelief and frustration bubbling inside me. "I don't have any pets," I said, leading him to my backyard, the grass damp with morning dew beneath my feet, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the faint tang of the lake. I showed him my empty lawn, the lake sparkling in the sunlight, and my inflatable dolphin floating innocently on the water, its bright pink color a stark contrast to the natural greens and blues, a whimsical reminder of the joy I'd once found here. He apologized, his frustration evident in the tight set of his jaw, and left, muttering about wasted time as he walked back to his truck, his footsteps heavy with annoyance. I knew exactly who'd made the call. Margaret's desperation had reached a new low, her tactics escalating from petty fines to outright lies, her actions a direct assault on my peace, a violation of the sanctuary I'd built to honor my grandfather's memory. I stood on my deck, watching the officer drive away, a wave of exhaustion washing over me, the weight of the past few days pressing down on my shoulders like a physical burden. For a moment, I hesitated, my resolve faltering, the constant harassment a heavy toll on my spirit. Was this fight worth it? The endless notices, the invasion of my space, the constant need to defend what was mine. Was it worth defending my lake, my home, the memory of my grandfather? I closed my eyes, the sound of the lake a gentle whisper in the background, and pictured his face, his steady gaze, his unwavering belief in standing up for what's right, his hands guiding mine as we baited a hook, the sun warm on our backs. "This isn't just about the lake," I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible over the rustling leaves, the words a quiet affirmation of my resolve. "It's about my home, my freedom, the sanctuary I built to honor him. I can't let her take that from me." The thought reignited the fire in my chest, a spark of defiance that burned away the doubt, a reminder of why I was fighting, of the legacy I was protecting. I drove to the county records office that same day, my resolve hardening with every mile, the hum of the engine a steady rhythm that matched the beat of my heart, the road stretching out before me like a path to justice. I requested a full property survey, my hands steady as I filled out the forms, the clerk's bored expression a stark contrast to the urgency I felt, the weight of the moment a tangible force. The results came back within hours, my land, my lake, my dock, all clearly outside the association's boundaries, the map a definitive proof of my independence, the lines and labels a shield against Margaret's delusions. I printed the documents in color, large enough to frame, the vibrant lines a testament to my rights, a visual reminder of the truth I'd always known. I made copies, one for the sheriff, one for the association, and a laminated one just for Margaret, a symbolic shield against her fabricated authority, a declaration of my independence that I carried like a badge of honor. As I held the papers, a sense of empowerment surged through me, a reminder that I wasn't powerless, that I had the truth on my side, a weapon stronger than any of Margaret's lies. The association's next meeting was that Friday night at the community center, a squat building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign, its faded exterior a stark contrast to the tension brewing inside. I wasn't a member, but Margaret had dragged me into her mess, so I figured I had every right to attend, my presence a quiet act of defiance. I walked in with my documents, nodded to Sandra, and took a seat at the back, the wooden chair creaking beneath me, the air thick with whispered conversations and sidelong glances. The room buzzed with tension, a palpable energy that crackled like static. Apparently, I wasn't the only one Margaret had targeted, her reign of terror a shared burden among the residents. When her name came up on the agenda, the air grew heavy, a collective intake of breath as everyone leaned forward, anticipation hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Then Margaret strode in, her clipboard clutched like a shield, her posture rigid with self-righteous confidence, her floral blouse a vivid splash of color against the drab walls. She sat near the front, whispering to two residents, a middle-aged couple with tired eyes and furrowed brows, who looked as fed up as I felt, their expressions a mirror of my own frustration. When her turn to speak came, she launched into a theatrical rant about neighborhood harmony and shared responsibility, her voice rising with each word, her gestures dramatic enough for a stage play, her hands slicing through the air like a conductor leading a symphony of chaos. She pointed to my lake, claiming it disrupted the community's aesthetic and called me defiant, a threat to our values, her words dripping with venom, each accusation a dagger aimed at my heart. Her voice rose to a crescendo, ending with a dramatic quote about law and order, her arms folding triumphantly as she sat down, a smug smile on her lips, her confidence a stark contrast to the truth I held in my hands. I stood up, my heart pounding but my voice calm, the folder in my hands a lifeline against the storm of her accusations, each step to the front of the room a declaration of my resolve. I introduced myself and handed my property documents to the board, my movements deliberate, the weight of every eye in the room a tangible force, their gazes a mix of curiosity and support. I explained that I'd never been part of the association, that Margaret had filed a false police report, and that she'd been impersonating their authority with fake rules, my voice steady despite the intensity of the moment, the words a quiet assertion of my rights. Then I played a clip from my security footage, the one of her sneaking around at night, stuffing my mailbox, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the sidewalk, her movements furtive and desperate. The room erupted in gasps and laughter, a wave of sound that washed over me, a validation of my fight, the shared outrage a balm to the wounds of the past weeks. Margaret's face drained of color, her hands gripping her clipboard so tightly I thought it might snap, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Sandra took the floor, confirming Margaret's removal from the board and the multiple warnings she'd ignored, her voice firm but tinged with exhaustion, her words a damning indictment of Margaret's actions, a promise of justice that sent a ripple of relief through the room. She announced that the association would pursue legal action to stop her antics, her tone resolute, the decision a beacon of hope in the chaos. Margaret tried to speak, her voice rising in protest, a desperate attempt to reclaim control, but no one listened, the crowd's murmurs drowning her out, a chorus of rejection that echoed through the room. She stormed out before the meeting ended, her clipboard slapping against her thigh, her exit as dramatic as her entrance, her defeat a shared victory for everyone she'd terrorized. That night, I checked my cameras again, the glow of the screen casting a faint light across my living room, the quiet of the cabin a stark contrast to the chaos of the day. Margaret was back, standing just outside my gate, staring at my house in the moonlight, her silhouette a dark omen against the silver glow, her presence a chilling reminder of her unyielding obsession. She didn't move, didn't speak, just glared for 3 long minutes before walking away, her steps slow and deliberate, as if she were plotting her next move, her shadow a lingering thread in the night. I didn't feel fear, not exactly. I felt a quiet, powerful satisfaction, a deep certainty that I'd struck a blow she couldn't ignore, a small victory in the larger war. She'd picked the wrong fight, and she was starting to realize it, her defeat a crack in the armor of her delusions. But I knew Margaret. She wasn't the type to surrender, not with her history of vendettas, not with Sandra's warning ringing in my ears like a bell tolling the approach of a storm. She doesn't stop. I braced myself for what might come next, a knot of anticipation tightening in my chest, my fingers tracing the edge of my grandfather's old fishing lure on the table, its worn metal a tangible reminder of why I was fighting, of the legacy I was protecting. 3 days later, I woke to the sound of drills and hammering, a jarring intrusion that pulled me from a restless sleep, the the noise a harsh reminder of the battle I was still fighting. I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, the bitter taste grounding me as I took in the scene, the morning air cool against my skin. Margaret was overseeing 2 workers installing a massive wooden barrier just outside my fence, along the shared path. The rhythmic thud of their hammers a stark contrast to the morning's stillness, the sound of physical assault on the peace I'd fought to reclaim. One held a sign that read, "Restricted access. Association members only." The letters uneven and hastily painted, a testament to her desperation. The other poured concrete into the ground, the gray sludge a permanent mark on the earth, its permanence a direct challenge to my rights. Margaret stood with her arms crossed, barking orders like a construction foreman, her floral blouse a vivid splash of color against the drab wood, her sunglasses glinting with a manic determination. I leaned over my fence, my voice calm but firm, the coffee mug warm in my hands, a small comfort in the face of her latest assault. "Margaret, what is this?" I asked, my tone even despite the frustration bubbling inside me. She pointed at me with her clipboard, her eyes narrowing behind her sunglasses, her voice sharp with defiance. "This is to protect the community. Non-members shouldn't have access to amenities they don't support." I raised an eyebrow, my mind racing, the absurdity of her words sinking in. Access. She was building a wall to block her own view of my lake, or rather, the view she thought she deserved to control, her delusion so deep it defied logic, her actions a desperate grasp at power she'd never had. I asked if she had a permit, my tone measured despite the anger simmering beneath the surface, the question a quiet challenge to her authority. She claimed it was temporary, her voice dripping with false confidence, but the concrete told a different story, its permanence a direct violation of my rights, a physical manifestation of her obsession. By noon, the wall was up, a gaudy monstrosity with a vinyl banner stretched across it, declaring the area an association-only recreational zone. The words a mockery of the truth I'd fought to protect. It was hideous, painted in clashing colors with typos galore. Association instead of association, recreational misspelled as recreational. A testament to her haste, her desperation to assert control at any cost. It blocked the afternoon light from my dock, casting a shadow over the lake that felt like a physical weight on my shoulders. The once golden sunlight that danced on the water now dulled, the lake's surface a muted gray, a visual reminder of Margaret's intrusion. I stood on my deck, staring at the wall, a mix of anger and sadness washing over me, the emotions a tangled knot in my chest. This was my grandfather's legacy, a place where I'd planned to teach my future children to fish, to swim, to love the freedom of open water, just as he had taught me. And now, it felt tainted, overshadowed by Margaret's petty vendetta, the beauty of the lake marred by her obsession. But I didn't react the way Margaret wanted, not yet. I didn't yell or tear it down, though the urge to rip the banner apart with my bare hands was strong, the anger of fire that burned hot in my veins. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording, my heart steady with purpose, the act of documenting a small rebellion against her control, a quiet assertion of my rights. I hired a licensed surveyor that day, my mind racing with the possibilities of what this wall might mean, the legal implications a lifeline in the chaos, a beacon of hope in the storm. The results were clear. The structure encroached on my property by 7 feet, the boundary lines on the map a stark confirmation of her overreach, a definitive proof of her violation. It wasn't just petty, it was illegal, a direct assault on my rights, a challenge I couldn't ignore. I called the county zoning office, my voice calm as I explained the situation, the words flowing with a quiet confidence I hadn't felt in days, the act of speaking out a small victory in itself. They promised to investigate, and as I hung up, I felt a flicker of hope, a light in the darkness Margaret had cast, a reminder that I wasn't powerless, that justice was within reach. Margaret didn't stop there. Her war escalated, her desperation palpable in every move, her actions a storm that grew stronger with each passing day. She began leaving flyers around the neighborhood, stamped with a fake association seal, the paper crinkled and smudged as if printed in a hurry, the ink bleeding at the edges like her crumbling facade. They urged residents to report unauthorized lake activities, excessive water usage, and disruptive behavior. The language so over the top, it was almost comical, a desperate attempt to rally support for her cause. I found one on my truck, listing my offenses: disruptive wave creation, water misuse during drought conditions, and visual pollution from floating devices. The accusations laughable if they weren't so infuriating. Each word a dagger aimed at my peace. The sheer volume of flyers, dozens scattered across mailboxes, windshields, and porches, sent a chill down my spine. The scale of her campaign a testament to her obsession. Margaret was trying to turn the neighborhood against me, to paint me as the villain in her twisted narrative, to isolate me in the community I'd come to love. I began to notice neighbors glancing at me as I walked to my mailbox, their expressions a mix of curiosity and suspicion. The weight of their gaze is a heavy burden on my shoulders. One morning, an elderly woman across the street, Mrs. Harper, stopped me as I retrieved my mail, her hands clutching a flyer, her eyes soft but laced with concern. "Is it true you're causing trouble with the association?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her hands trembling slightly as she held the paper. I explained the situation, showed her my property documents, and watched as her face softened with understanding, her eyes filling with a quiet empathy. "Margaret's been a menace for years," she admitted, her voice low, as if afraid Margaret might hear her from across the street. "She tried to find me for my rose bushes last year, said they were too red, that they clashed with the neighborhood's aesthetic. I'm glad someone's standing up to her." Her words were a small comfort, a reminder that I wasn't alone, that Margaret's reign of terror had touched others, that my fight was for more than just myself. But the weight of Margaret's campaign still pressed down on me, a constant reminder of the battle I was fighting, the stakes higher than I'd ever imagined. That afternoon, I hosted a small barbecue, partly to spite Margaret, but also to reclaim some semblance of normalcy, to remind myself of the joy my home could still hold. Friends gathered, the smell of sizzling ribs filling the air, the smoky aroma a comforting contrast to the tension that had defined my days. The sound of laughter rang out across the lake, a balm to my frayed nerves, a reminder of the community I was fighting for. Music played softly from a Bluetooth speaker, a playlist of classic rock that reminded me of simpler times, of summer days with my grandfather, his laughter echoing in my memory. Margaret peeked over her wall through a jagged hole she called an inspection window, snapping photos every few minutes, her camera flashing like a warning signal, her presence a dark cloud over our joy. One of my guests, a boisterous friend named Tom, called out, "Hey, enjoying the show?" His voice light with humor, a challenge wrapped in laughter. We all laughed, the sound ringing out across the lake, a defiant chorus against her surveillance, a shared moment of joy that she couldn't touch. Margaret disappeared behind her wall, her face red with humiliation, her camera dangling uselessly in her hand, her defeat a small victory in the larger war. For a moment, I felt a surge of triumph, a reminder that I could still find joy in the midst of her chaos, that my home was still mine, no matter how hard she tried to take it from me. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the lake in shades of orange and purple, the water reflecting the fiery sky, I couldn't shake the feeling that Margaret was planning something bigger, something that would test my resolve in ways I hadn't yet imagined, her shadow a lingering threat in the fading light. 2 days later, a county inspector arrived, his white truck a stark contrast to the greenery of my yard, his arrival a beacon of hope in the storm. I walked him around to the back, showed him the footage, the survey, and the boundary markers, my hands steady despite the tension in my chest, the weight of the moment pressing down on me like a physical force. He took notes, his pen scratching against the clipboard, the sound a quiet promise of justice, and left without a word, his expression unreadable, his silence a void that filled me with both hope and dread. 48 hours later, a yellow notice appeared on Margaret's wall, a demolition order, the bold text a beacon of justice that made my heart leap with relief. The county had confirmed the encroachment and given her 1 week to remove it, the deadline a ticking clock that I knew Margaret would ignore, her stubbornness a wall as unyielding as the one she'd built. She saw me reading the notice and exploded, screaming about sabotage and corruption, her voice echoing across the neighborhood, her floral blouse a vivid blur as she gestured wildly, her words a desperate attempt to rewrite reality. "You've tricked the inspector. You've corrupted the board," she shouted, her voice raw with desperation, her hands trembling with rage. I just waved and walked away, a smile tugging at my lips, the satisfaction of her unraveling a small victory in the larger war, a reminder that the truth was stronger than her lies. The neighborhood group chat lit up with memes. Margaret versus the wall became an instant hit. The images shared and reshared with captions like "The Great Wall of Delusion" and "Margaret's Folly." The humor a shared release of the tension we'd all felt. On the 8th day, a city crew arrived, their truck emblazoned with the county seal, their tools gleaming in the morning light, their presence a promise of justice that filled me with hope. Margaret tried to block them, shouting about her rights, her voice raw with desperation, her floral blouse flapping in the breeze as she stood in front of the wall like a human shield. But the sheriff, the same one from the lake incident, gently moved her aside, his patience a stark contrast to her frenzy, his calm demeanor a reminder of the justice I'd fought for. Within hours, the wall was gone, the sun shining on my lake once more, the golden light a symbol of reclaiming what was mine, the water sparkling like a promise of peace restored. That night, I sat by the water, a beer in hand, the sunset painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, the air filled with the scent of blooming jasmine, a sweet contrast to the bitterness of the past weeks. But I knew Margaret wasn't done, not really. She never took defeat lightly, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming, a storm on the horizon that would test my resolve in ways I hadn't yet faced, her shadow a lingering threat in the fading light. 5 days later, an envelope appeared under my door. No stamp, no return address. The paper crumpled as if stuffed in haste, its presence a dark omen in the morning light. Inside was a stack of crumpled papers, topped with a note in bold red letters. "See you in court." Margaret had filed a lawsuit against me in small claims court, accusing me of harassment, emotional distress, and community defamation. Her claims as baseless as her fake notices, her words a desperate attempt to reclaim the control she'd lost. She claimed I'd ruined her reputation and demanded $6,000 for her suffering. The amount so absurd it made me laugh. A deep, belly laugh that echoed through my cabin, a release of the tension I'd carried for weeks. But I didn't take it lightly. Not with Margaret's history of escalation, not with the stakes as high as they were, the weight of her actions a heavy burden on my shoulders. I gathered every piece of evidence, footage, notices, surveys, the demolition order, even group chat messages from neighbors who'd been harassed by Margaret, their stories a chilling parallel to my own, a testament to the breadth of her terror. The hearing was set for the following week, and as the date approached, I felt a mix of anticipation and dread, a storm brewing inside me that matched the one Margaret had unleashed, the weight of the moment a tangible force that I carried with me. The day of the hearing was surreal, the courthouse a gray monolith against the bright morning sky, its imposing structure a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding within. Margaret stood outside, a price tag still dangling from her blazer, pacing with a binder under her arm, her movements frantic with nervous energy, her floral blouse a vivid splash of color against the gray concrete. She pointed at me and shouted, "There he is, the terror of Willow Creek," her voice carrying across the parking lot, drawing curious glances from passers-by, her words a desperate attempt to paint me as the villain in her twisted narrative. I waved politely and walked inside, the cool air of the courthouse a stark contrast to the heat outside, the quiet hum of the building a momentary respite from the storm. The judge, a weary man in his late 60s with deep lines etched into his face, called the case, his voice a monotone that belied the drama about to unfold, his eyes tired but sharp with experience. Margaret opened with a victim impact statement, her voice trembling with theatrical emotion, her words a litany of exaggerated grievances that echoed through the courtroom like a poorly acted play. She spoke of visual trauma from lake activities and emotional decay from public shame, her hands gesturing wildly as if to emphasize her suffering, her binder slamming onto the table for dramatic effect, the sound a jarring intrusion in the quiet room. She called my property a threat to community values, her voice rising to a fever pitch, her eyes glinting with a manic determination that sent a chill down my spine. The judge's eyebrows shot up, his expression a mix of disbelief and exhaustion, his pen pausing mid-note as he processed her performance, his patience visibly thinning with each word. I presented my evidence calmly, walking through the timeline. The false 911 call, the fake notices, the wall, the harassment, my voice steady despite the weight of the moment, the eyes of the courtroom on me, their gazes a mix of curiosity and support. I showed the footage of Margaret screaming at the county workers during the demolition, my hands steady as I handed the judge the printed screenshots and videos, each piece of evidence a brick in the wall of truth I'd built. He asked if I had proof of her impersonating the association, his tone sharp with curiosity, his eyes narrowing as he leaned forward. I handed over the evidence, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken, the weight of the truth a steady anchor in the storm. Then, unexpectedly, Sandra stood up to speak, her presence a surprise that sent a ripple of murmurs through the room, her posture rigid with determination. She confirmed Margaret's removal from the board and the chaos she'd caused, her voice firm but tinged with exhaustion, her words a damning indictment of Margaret's actions, a testament to the toll her obsession had taken on the community. The judge turned to Margaret, his gaze piercing, his voice a quiet command. "Do you have evidence this man broke the law or harmed you?" Margaret held up a blurry photo of me floating on my lake, claiming it was proof of disrespect, her voice trembling with desperation, her hands shaking as she clutched the photo like a lifeline. The judge sighed, dismissed the case, and issued a restraining order against Margaret, barring her from contacting me and ordering her to pay court fees, with a warning of criminal charges if she continued, his ruling a beacon of justice that filled me with relief. The next week was blissfully quiet. No flyers, no late-night visits, just the gentle sound of the lake and the rustle of leaves in the breeze, a peace I hadn't felt in weeks. Neighbors stopped by, some with gifts, thanking me for standing up to Margaret, their gratitude a balm to the wounds of the past weeks, a reminder of the community I'd fought for. One brought brownies, the chocolate scent filling my kitchen, a sweet contrast to the bitterness of the battle. Another left a note. For surviving association drama. The words a small but meaningful acknowledgement of the fight I'd endured. But I knew Margaret. She wasn't gone for good, not with her history of vendettas, not with her unyielding need for control, her shadow a lingering threat in the quiet. 2 weeks later, the neighborhood felt like it had been cleansed, a weight lifted from the air, the tension that had defined our days replaced by a tentative peace. People smiled again, kids played freely, their laughter echoing through the streets, a joyful sound that filled me with hope. Then, the online storm hit. Someone had compiled clips from the association meeting, Margaret's courtroom rant, and group chat screenshots into a video titled, "Neighborhood Watchdog Gets Shut Down in Court." It went viral, racking up millions of views, the comments section a flood of support and humor, a testament to the power of truth in the face of delusion. Memes flooded the internet. "Wave violator," over Margaret's face, my lake captioned. "Not your association, not your rules." The humor a shared release of the tension we'd all felt. I didn't seek the attention, but I couldn't help but laugh. The sound a release of the tension I'd carried for so long. A moment of joy in the aftermath of the storm. Margaret vanished, curtains drawn, car gone, her house a silent shell, a testament to her defeat. Rumors swirled that she'd fled to her brother's house to escape the shame, her absence a quiet victory for the community she'd terrorized. The neighborhood began to heal, decorations returned, and laughter filled the air once more, a chorus of freedom that I'd fought to preserve, a reminder of the power of standing firm in the face of chaos. To celebrate, I threw a lake party themed freedom from association nonsense, a defiant reclaiming of my sanctuary, a joyful declaration of victory. I had towels printed with lake rules. Mine, not Margaret's. The bold letters a testament to my independence, a symbol of the freedom I'd fought for. Friends brought inflatables, dolphins, sharks, even a giant unicorn that bobbed on the water like a symbol of joy, its bright colors a stark contrast to the shadows Margaret had cast. We played music, laughed, and took photos with a cardboard cutout of Margaret, a speech bubble reading, Community distress and progress. The humor, a shared release of the tension we'd all felt, a moment of joy that she couldn't touch. As the sun set, casting the lake in shades of gold and purple, the water reflecting the fiery sky, someone asked if I'd ever join the association now that Margaret was gone, their voice light with curiosity, their eyes sparkling with the shared joy of the moment. I pointed to my new sign by the dock. Not part of your association, never was, never will be. The words a testament to my independence, a promise to my grandfather's memory, a declaration of the freedom I'd fought to protect. Everyone cheered, and a friend suggested turning it into a bumper sticker, the idea sparking laughter and ideas for more ways to celebrate our victory, a moment of unity in the aftermath of the storm. Maybe one day, I thought, the sign a beacon of the freedom I'd fought for, a reminder of the battle I'd won. A week after the party, a for sale sign appeared on Margaret's lawn. No fanfare, no goodbye, just a quiet surrender, a final admission of defeat. Whispers flew through the neighborhood. Some said she'd moved across the country, seeking a fresh start far from the shame she'd brought upon herself. Others claimed her family had forced the sale, unable to bear the public humiliation that had followed her viral downfall. I didn't dig for answers. I didn't need to. All I cared about was that the house she'd used as her base for chaos, the epicenter of her paper empire of nonsense, would soon belong to someone new. Hopefully someone who didn't see a lake float as a crime against humanity. Someone who could bring light to a space that had been shrouded in darkness for too long. When the moving trucks arrived, I stayed in my garden, pruning roses and listening to the birds, their melodies a sweet contrast to the silence Margaret had left behind. The scent of the flowers a reminder of the peace I'd fought to reclaim. By evening, her driveway was empty, her windows dark, a stark contrast to the vibrant life that had returned to the neighborhood. Margaret was gone, and with her, the storm she'd brought into our lives, her absence a quiet victory that filled me with a deep, abiding peace. I stood by my gate, the cool evening air brushing against my skin, the scent of the lake a familiar comfort, and looked at my sign one more time. Not part of your association, never was, never will be. It wasn't just a statement. It was a testament to resilience, a reminder that some battles are about standing your ground, not winning a war, about holding fast to the truth in the face of chaos. Margaret had tried to control me, to bend me to her will, to strip away the freedom I'd fought so hard to protect, but I'd held firm, armed with truth and patience, with the memory of my grandfather's lessons guiding me through the storm. Her defeat wasn't just mine. It was the neighborhood's, a shared victory for everyone she'd terrorized, a collective sigh of relief that echoed through the streets of Willow Creek. And in that silence, I found a peace deeper than any I'd known before, a quiet that spoke of healing, of hope, of a future unmarred by her shadow. This story isn't just about a lake or a nosy neighbor. It's about courage, about refusing to let someone else's delusions strip away your freedom, about standing firm in the face of chaos and emerging stronger on the other side. Have you ever faced a Margaret in your life? Someone who tried to control you, to impose rules that didn't apply, to take away what was rightfully yours? Take a moment to reflect on your own battles, on the times you stood your ground, and share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else to stand up for what's theirs, just like I did, to find the strength to fight for their own sanctuary, their own peace. At Daily Narrated Stories, we're dedicated to bringing you tales that inspire, uplift, and remind you of the strength within us all. Stories that show the power of resilience, the beauty of truth, and the joy of reclaiming what's yours. Stories like this one prove that even in the face of chaos, courage and truth can light the way, guiding us to a brighter future. But we need your help to keep sharing these life-changing narratives, to keep building a community where stories of hope and triumph can thrive. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you matters. Your support can make all the difference. Don't miss this chance. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and join our community before this moment slips away, before the next story unfolds without you. Let's make Daily Narrated Stories the home for tales that spark hope, courage, and connection. Together, we can do this, and I can't wait to share the next chapter with you.